Fourth. Third. Minimize carbon resources in cities where 50% of us live. C10. Bottom line highlights. Redesign urban transport. Charge cars to enter city. Bike friendliness. Massively reduced water use. Composting toilets. Urban farming. Upgrade, integrate squatter settlements. Stop need for squatter settlements. Eliminate parking subsidies. City livability measure. The ratio of parks to parking lots may be the best single indicator of the livability of a city. An indication of whether the city is designed for people or for cars. 1. Urbanization is the second dominant demographic trend of our time. 2. After population growth itself. In 1900, 150 million people lived in cities. By 2000, it was 2.8 billion people, a 19-fold increase. As of 2008, more than half of us are living in cities, making us, for the first time, an urban species. Urbanization. 1900 there were only a handful of cities with a million people. Today 414 cities have at least that many inhabitants, 20 megacities with 10 million or more residents. Tokyo, with 35 million residents, has more people than all of Canada. Mexico City's population of 19 million is nearly equal to that of Australia. New York, Sao Paulo, Mumbai, formerly Bombay, Delhi, Shanghai, Kolkata, Calcutta, and Jakarta follow close behind. World cities are facing unprecedented problems. Mexico City, Tehran, Kolkata, Bangkok, Shanghai, and hundreds of other cities, the air is no longer safe to breathe. In some cities, the air is so polluted that breathing is equivalent to smoking 2 packs of cigarettes per day. New urbanism seeks to revive the traditional city planning of an era when cities were designed around human beings instead of automobiles. Most remarkable modern urban transformations has occurred in Bogota, Colombia. Wanted to know what could be done for the 70%, the majority, who did not own cars. Realized that a city that has a pleasant environment for children and the elderly would work for everyone. City banned the parking of cars on sidewalks. Created or renovated 1,200 parks. Introduced a highly successful bus-based rapid transit system. Built hundreds of kilometers of bicycle paths and pedestrian streets. Reduced rush hour traffic by 40%, planted 100,000 trees. Involved local citizens directly in the improvement of their neighborhoods. Safer than Washington, D.C. Increasing urban mobility. Curitiba, Brazil, one of the first to design and adopt an alternative transportation system. Does not mimic those in the West, but that is inexpensive and commuter friendly. Since 1974, Curitiba's transportation system has been totally restructured. 40% of the people own cars. These play a minor role in urban transport. Busing, biking, and walking totally dominate, with more than half of all trips in the city by bus. The city's population has tripled since 1974, but its car traffic has declined by a remarkable 30%. The ecology of cities. Cities require a concentration of food, water, energy, and materials that nature cannot provide. Collecting these masses of materials, and then dispersing them in the form of garbage, sewage, and pollutants in air and water is challenging city managers everywhere. The evolution of modern cities was tied to advances in transport, initially for ships and trains, but it was the internal combustion engine, combined with cheap oil, that provided the mobility of people and freight that fueled the phenomenal urban growth of the 20th century. Depend on distant sources for basic amenities. Los Angeles, for example, draws much of its water from the Colorado River, some 970 kilometers, 600 miles, away. Mexico City's burgeoning population, living at an altitude of 3,000 meters, must now depend on the costly pumping of water from 150 kilometers away, and must lift it 1,000 meters or more, to augment its inadequate water supplies. Beijing is planning to draw water from the Yangtze River basin some 1,200 kilometers away. Tokyo, wheat comes largely from the Great Plains of North America and from Australia. Its corn supply comes largely from the US Midwest. Soybeans come from the US Midwest and the Brazilian Cerrado. The very oil used to move resources into and out of cities often comes from distant oil fields. Redesigning urban transport. Urban transport systems, based on a combination of rail lines, bus lines, bicycle pathways, and pedestrian walkways. A rail system provides the foundation for a city's transportation system. The nodes on such a system become the obvious places to concentrate office buildings, high-rise apartment buildings, and shops. Megacities regularly turn to underground rail systems to provide mobility. For cities of intermediate size, light rail is often an attractive option. Bogota's Bus Rapid Transit (BRT) system, express lanes for buses, 6 other Colombian cities but elsewhere too, Mexico City, Sao Paulo, Hanoi, Seoul, Taipei, and Quito, in China, Beijing, Ottawa, Toronto, Minneapolis, Las Vegas, and much to everyone's delight Los Angeles. Charging cars to enter city. Singapore, long a leader in urban transport innovation, has imposed a tax on all roads leading into the city centre. Also Oslo, Bergen, and Trondheim as well as London and Stockholm. London, $10 charge. The first year the number of people using buses to travel into the central city climbed by 38%, delays dropped by 30%, and vehicle speeds on key thoroughfares increased by 21%. Number of cars and minicabs into central London during peak hours has been reduced by 70,000, a drop of 36%, while the number of bicycles has increased by 50%. 2007, Milan announced it would impose a pollution charge of $14 on vehicles entering its historic center in daytime hours during the week. Other sites now considering similar measures include New York, Sao Paulo, San Francisco, and Barcelona. Bike-friendly transport. The key to realizing the potential of the bicycle is to create a bicycle-friendly transport system. Among the industrial country leaders in designing bicycle-friendly transport systems are the Dutch, the Danes, and the Germans. Some traffic signals permit cyclists to move out before cars. Roughly 30% of all urban trips in the Netherlands are on bicycle. This compares with 1% in the United States. Reducing urban water use. The one-time use of water to disperse human and industrial wastes is an outmoded practice, made obsolete by new technologies and water shortages. Sewer system is actually a pathogen dispersal system. Poor sanitation and personal hygiene claim the lives of some 2 million children per year, a toll that is 1/3 the 6 million lives claimed by hunger and malnutrition. Composting toilet. Simple, waterless odorless toilet linked to a small compost facility. Dry composting converts human fecal material into a soil-like humus, which is essentially odorless, and is scarcely 10% of the original volume. Need to be emptied every year or so, depending on design and size. Vendors periodically collect the humus and market it as a soil supplement. First large community with dry compost toilets. Inner Mongolia. Designed to house 7,000 people, the town is scheduled for completion by the end of 2007. In this system, urine, which contains 80% of the nutrients leaving the human body, is diverted into a designated container. It is then collected and recycled directly onto the land as a fertilizer supplement. Both human solid waste and kitchen waste are composted into a rich humus, sanitized, and used as an organic fertilizer. For many of the 2.6 billion people who lack sanitation facilities, composting toilets may be the answer. Compost toilet leaders. China, some 100,000 urine diverting, dry compost toilets now in use. India, Uganda, South Africa, Mexico, Bolivia, and 7 countries in West Africa. Once a toilet is separated from the water use system, recycling household water becomes a much simpler process. Cities reusing the same water continuously. Only a small percentage of water is lost to evaporation each time it cycles through. Given the technologies that are available today, it is quite possible to recycle urban water supplies comprehensively, largely removing cities as a claimant on scarce water resources. Singapore, for example, which buys water from Malaysia at a high price, is beginning to recycle water, reducing the amount it imports. For some cities, water recycling may become a condition of their survival. Conserving household water. More water efficient showerheads, flush toilets, dishwashers, and clothes washers. Toilets and showers together account for over half of indoor water use, 50% plus. Traditional flush toilets use 6 gallons, or 22.7 liters, per flush. The legal US maximum for new toilets is 1.6 gallons, 6 liters, 70% less. New toilets with a dual flush 2-button technology use only 1 gallon for a liquid waste flush, and 1.6 gallons for a solid waste flush, 70–84% less. Shifting from a showerhead flowing at 5 gallons per minute to a 2.5 gallons per minute model cuts water use in half, 50%. With washing machines, a horizontal axis design developed in Europe uses 40% less water than the traditional top-loading US models. Farming in the city, Hanoi, Vietnam. Hanoi, Vietnam, 80% of the fresh vegetables come from farms in or immediately adjacent to the city. Farms in the city or its shadow also produce 50% of the pork and the poultry consumed in the city. Half of the city's freshwater fish are produced by enterprising urban fish farmers. 40% of the egg supply is produced within the city or nearby. Urban farmers ingeniously recycle human and animal waste to nourish plants and to fertilize fish ponds. Fish farmers near Kolkata, India, manage vast water fish ponds that cover nearly 4,000 hectares and produce 18,000 tons of fish each year. Bacteria in the ponds break down the organic waste in the city's sewage. Supports the rapid growth of algae that feed the local strains of herbivorous fish. Provides the city with a steady supply of fresh fish that are consistently of better quality than any others entering the Kolkata market. Shanghai Nutrient Recycling Zone. Municipal government manages 300,000 hectares of farmland to recycle the city's night soil. 50% of Shanghai's pork and poultry, 60% of its vegetables, and 90% of its milk and eggs come from the city and the immediately surrounding region. US. A huge potential for urban gardening. Chicago has 70,000 vacant lots. Philadelphia, 31,000. Nationwide vacant lots in cities would total in the hundreds of thousands. A regenerative effect. Upgrading squatter settlements. Between 2000 and 2050, world population is projected to grow by 3 billion. Little of this growth is projected for industrial countries or for the rural developing world. In cities in developing countries, with much of this urban growth taking place in squatter settlements. Squatter settlements. Stop need for squatter settlements, characterized by grossly inadequate housing and a lack of access to urban services. One of the best ways to make rural/urban migration manageable is to improve conditions in the countryside. This means not only providing basic social services, such as healthcare and education for children, as outlined in Chapter 7, but also encouraging industrial investment in small towns throughout the country, rather than just in prime cities, such as Mexico City or Bangkok. Such policies will slow the flow into cities to a more orderly pace. Squatter settlements. Although political leaders might hope that these settlements will one day be abandoned, the reality is that they will continue expanding. The challenge is to integrate them into urban life in a humane way that provides hope through the potential for upgrading. The alternative is mounting resentment, social friction, and violence. Cities for people. Inherent conflict between the automobile and the city. Urban air pollution from automobiles is emerging as a leading health issue in hundreds of cities. Worsening congestion also takes a direct economic toll in rising costs in time and gasoline. Psychological cost, a deprivation of contact with the natural world and asphalt complex. There is an innate human need for contact with nature. Creating more livable cities, and the mobility that people desire depends on shifting resources from roads and highways to urban transit and bicycle support facilities. Eliminate parking subsidies. Off-street parking subsidies in the United States are worth at least $127 billion a year, obviously encouraging people to drive. 1992, California mandated that employers match parking subsidies with cash that can be used by the recipient either to pay public transport fares or to buy a bicycle. What society should be striving for is not parking subsidies, but parking fees that reflect the costs of traffic congestion and the deteriorating quality of life as cities are taken over by cars in parking lots. Bottom line highlights. Redesign urban transport. Charge cars to enter city. Bike friendliness. Massively reduced water use. Composting toilets. Urban farming. Upgrade, integrate squatter settlements. Stop need for squatter settlements. Eliminate parking subsidies.